Hi everyone, it's Christmas time again, and to celebrate we're going to play a game based on some classic Christmas icons, The Simpsons. Wait, just hear me out. I know The Simpsons definitely aren't what come to mind when one thinks of Christmas icons, but the very first episode of The Simpsons, Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire, was a Christmas episode that aired 30 years ago on December 17th, 1989. While the animation was pretty bad, something consistent across the first season, the storytelling is top-notch. While The Simpsons has certainly had some bumpy moments over its long history, overall it's still standing strong with, as of the airing of this video, 672 episodes. The Simpsons has managed to spawn an enormous amount of merchandise over the past 30 years, including toys, books, music, food, pillows, t-shirts, and of course, video games. There are a lot of them, especially in the early years of the show. One of the first, and probably the most famous, is The Simpsons, made by Konami and released in arcades in 1991. It's a classic-style beat-em-up where up to 4 players can play as the 4 main members of the family as they set off to rescue Maggie from Smithers and Mr. Burns. Personally, I prefer playing as Marge since you can see her scrapped rabbit ears in a couple sprites. Yeah, Matt Groening originally wanted to reveal that Marge was secretly a rabbit from his comic Life in Hell, but eventually nixed the idea because it was too far-fetched. Each character has a standard offensive attack, but can pick up other weapons to use such as slingshots. Throughout the game, several other characters from the show make appearances, but only those who first appeared in the first season, like Martin, Skinner, Krusty, Sherry and Terry, Moe, Barney, Bleeding Gums Murphy, and Sideshow Bob, who's an ally for some reason. I guess Konami thought this was friendly laughter. There are 2 generic enemy types, thin guys who kinda look like Troy McClure, and older, fatter guys who kinda look like Mason Fairbanks, a one-time character who wouldn't be introduced for 15 years after the game came out, so yeah, it's a coincidence. There are also plenty of other minor enemies who show up from time to time, like zombies and Bigfoot. The bosses range from somewhat normal, like a boxer and a kabuki guy, to the weirder ones like this Krusty Balloon. There's also this extremely big Moe-looking guy. I really want to point out how freakishly tall this guy must be, since canonically Marge is 8'6". The first 2 levels are fairly normal, downtown Springfield and Krusty Land. Then you go to a cemetery and fight some zombies, doing the Thriller dance of course. Stage 4 is at Moe's, and Stage 5 is at the Rocky locale from the episode The Call of the Simpsons. Stage 6, Dreamland, is definitely the best. It's got cloudy and ethereal incarnations of the Simpsons' home and elementary school, and enemies based on things the Simpsons enjoy, like donuts and saxophones. The boss is also this bowling ball demon. Stage 7 is at the television studio, and Stage 8 is a boss-only level at the nuclear plant. First it's Smithers, who's pretty easy to take down, then it's Mr. Burns in a powerful mech which takes 3 phases to defeat. The Simpsons is definitely the greatest beat-em-up I've ever played, simply due to the great production value and fun to be found within. I highly recommend it. Alright, what's next? No children should be allowed in a place with a name like that.
I'm gonna tell you the story of Krusty's expensive new suit. His sexual harassment suit. Oh boy.
Actually, in the game, Krusty is the one trying to fix the funhouse when things go awry. Krusty's Super Funhouse is essentially a side-scrolling puzzle game. You take control of Krusty trying to get these little itchy guys toward a processing machine controlled by Bart. At first it's pretty easy, but then things get hard. You have to pick up and move blocks to create passageways for the itchies, and more than once I got legitimately stuck and it took a while for me to figure out how to solve the puzzle. Your main move is kicking, which can be used to uncover food, which grants you points. Snakes are common enemies which you can throw pies at to defeat, cause, you know, that's what clowns do. I like the random advertisements you see plastered throughout, like Krusty Burger, Otto's Bus Stores, and Herondrum. That's really all there is to say about this one. It's not a great game, but it's not terrible by any means. Next up is Virtual Springfield for the PC. This game's main selling point is its humor, something that the manual makes very apparent. Everything is written as if it were spoken by one of the show's characters with all their quirks and charms. For example, now I'm only going to explain this once, so if your mental capacity is less than adequate, I suggest you take notes. Just do not scribble loudly or I shall have to ask you to leave. Let us commence. There's a set of collect your cards dispensed in random manner throughout the town of Springfield. You will have to find these yourself through keen observation and persistence. Do not ask for help because I will refuse. When you open up the game, you get an introduction by the one and only Troy McClure, voiced by the late great Phil Hartman.
You may remember me as town spokesman for such computer travel guides as Duluth, It'll Grow on You, and Suddenly Tulsa.
Rest in peace, Phil. Anyway, this game features a recreation of the notoriously impossible to locate city of Springfield. As you walk around town, you'll come across many familiar faces, usually there to offer a witty remark before leaving.
Oh, I ain't
getting any prettier.
This is one of those 90s PC games where your main goal is to click on as many things as possible. The amount of gags is unreal, and simply describing them doesn't do them justice. So instead, here's a montage of my favorite moments.
Welcome, kind shopper, to my humble store, and please keep your hands where I can see them, or I shall dance upon your bullet-riddled carcass.
We have a bowling ball for $5, Lisa sacks for $4, and some slightly used elephant-sized pants, $1.25.
Why, you little...
Don't know if I feel elation or shame by your obvious need to dig deeper into my inner being.
Two for the matinee. Hi, everybody.
Miss Hoover, I put my finger in my nose and then I pulled some of my brains out.
Complete core meltdown in 5, 4, 3, 2. Meltdown averted. Now get back to work.
That's what that does.
You discover some interesting things about the characters, like how Lisa has a doll holding another doll's head on a pitchfork. That's pretty messed up.
This is indeed a disturbing universe.
There is an objective, namely collecting certain objects, but with the amount of gags, you really don't need to care about them. If you can find Virtual Springfield, I implore you to get it.
Next up is Hit and Run, also known as Simpsons GTA.
While the objectives are substantially different, the gameplay both is essentially the same. You drive around town in your car, doing whatever you please, and also do on-foot missions. The basic story is that Buzz Cola has introduced a new type of soda, and while doing so are secretly spying on the populace of Springfield with these bee-looking cameras. Buzz Cola, bee cameras? I see what you did there, game. The game begins with simple missions like drive to the Quickie Mart to get some ice cream and drive to school to give Lisa her project. But they quickly become more complex. You'll get coins for driving into certain objects, destroying Buzz Cola machines and cameras, and also just find them lying around. It'll be in your best interest to get 125 coins as quickly as possible so you can purchase the Moo Moo. Money well spent. While driving around, you'll find that... Is that Mole Man? So yeah, while driving around, you'll find that your car can only sustain so much damage before it becomes too beaten up. When you take too much damage, it counts as a hit and run and the police will chase after you. If they catch you, it's a 50 coin fine. Luckily, it's pretty easy to avoid since touching one of these red symbols will fix your car. There are many different cars to use, such as the Plow King, which you need to buy from Barney for 150 coins. The cars all control differently from each other. For example, the Plow King is sturdier but makes turns poorly. These options make race optimization very challenging. Speaking of races, they're without a doubt the hardest part of the game. I've been trying this one race with Milhouse for 10 minutes and I haven't even come close. I really like Hit and Run because it has so many things I love. Humor, great visuals, fun gameplay, and the feeling of accomplishment you get from completing missions. An A+ game for me.
Last but certainly not least is the Simpsons game. It was released around the same time as the Simpsons movie, but they're completely unrelated.
The game begins with Homer dreaming of food, naturally, and as such level 1 takes place in the Land of Chocolate from the Season 3 episode The Barons Verkaufen der Kraftwerk. During this tutorial, you're introduced to the best part of the game, the fact that it lampshades the classic video game cliches. They're even collectible. For attacks, there are standard punches and kicks, but when this meter gets filled, you can do a special attack, and they're pretty cool. Each character also has special collectibles hidden in the stages, Duff Caps for Homer, Krusty Coupons for Bart, Malibu Stacy Seals for Lisa, and Store Coupons for Marge. Anyway, once you reach the top of the giant cake and eat the white rabbit, Homer Ball is unlocked. You can plow through obstacles and enemies with ease by flicking the Wii remote, and it's very satisfying. Anyway, on to the actual story, which begins in level 2, Bartman Begins. Bart buys the latest copy of Grand Theft Scratchy, but Marge takes it away because she doesn't want him playing violent games. Soon after, Bart comes across the manual for the Simpsons game, which falls out of the sky.
The only Simpsons game I can think of is the one where we all pretend Dad isn't an alcoholic.
Realizing he's in a video game and has special powers, Bart tags along with Homer and the two set off to stop the school bullies from stealing from the Museum of Natural History.
Because that's what heroes do.
Bart's main weapon is a slingshot, which can be used to activate various objects and contraptions. He can also gingerly float as Bartman, but it's not flight. It's not even falling with style. It is required to progress throughout the game, so you gotta learn how to do it. You can only control one character at a time. The one you aren't controlling will either follow you or stay behind like an idiot. When the latter occurs, they'll often be in the path of enemies as well, so be careful. There are also plenty of parts that require you to use certain characters together in certain ways, such as Homer standing on the head of the dinosaur skeleton so the tail rises high enough for Bart to reach the balcony. You foil the 3 bullies in different exhibits: Dolph under a skeleton, Kearney in some battle dioramas, and Jimbo in the planetarium. It turns out Skinner hired the bullies to steal the stuff because the school's funding was cut. Homer and Bart don't care, and the cops arrest them. Level 3, Around the World in 80 Bytes, sees Homer enter an internationally themed competition which is half race, half eating contest. It's weird because while it is a race, no one ever actually gets ahead of you, especially because Homer can't progress without Bart unlocking places for him. There's not much to say about the actual race until you reach the end, where you have to take down a replica Statue of Liberty. You use the Homer ball to pound down on these pillars so the statue will move and expose its weak spots. From there, all you have to do is aim and release. Not necessarily the most engaging level, but certainly not bad. Oh yeah, I also glitched out of the world at one point and had to restart the entire race. That was weird.
Hey, Homer! I get so perfectly scared!
In level 4, Lisa the Tree Hugger, you play as, you guessed it, Bart. And also Lisa. Lisa takes Bart along on her quest to stop Mr. Burns' deforestation efforts.
So, we'll cut down all the forests in Springfield and turn each tree into a single luxury toothpick.
Lisa attacks enemies with her saxophone, which can temporarily stun them in their paths. I don't know if that means she's really good or really bad. She also has the Hand of Buddha move, which allows her to pick up objects and place them down in certain places and solve puzzles. It's pretty cool. This level has the first example of infinitely spawning enemies. They'll keep coming if you don't destroy the source, in this case, porta potties. You know what? I'm not gonna think about that. Eventually, Lenny and Carl get trapped at a conveyor belt heading for some buzzsaws and you have to save them. Doing so requires crossing the river Frogger style so you can reach the other side with the target to stop the machines.
You saved our lives! You kids are heroes!
Yeah, we're gonna tell everyone we were rescued by, Homer's kids, whose names are...
Bart and Lisa! Oh, I can't believe you forgot our names. You've known us our whole lives.
So, we're not thinking about you all the time, you know?
Level 5, Mob Rules, brings Marge into the action. Her power is summoning people to serve her every whim, which she uses in her quest to end video game violence. It's pretty funny to watch her summon people. Like here's Flanders walking around minding his own business when, boom, instant pitchfork. Other people you can gather are Apu, Mrs. Krabappel, and Smithers. I tried to summon Grandpa, but it didn't really work out. When you send your thralls to a particular float, they'll just keep beating it up until it's destroyed, though it takes a while. The more people, the faster it goes. The most important aspect of this level is that for the first time in any Simpsons game, you can play as Maggie. It's a shame that Maggie is often overlooked because she's so darn cute.
Isn't that right, Maggie? Maggie? Maggie has seemingly disappeared.
Maggie is sent to turn on the hot water valve supplying the mayor's bathwater. This causes a distraction which makes the EA executive notice that Angry Mob Marge is formed. Since the executive was promised no mobs, Grand Theft Scratchy is cancelled. After level 5, King and Kodos arrive and sends an invasion fleet to Springfield. Calling back to 2 different Treehouse of Horrors, they also bring the Lard Lad to life and make the Dolphins vicious and feral. Bart and Lisa head to Professor Frink's place to seek advice but find he's entered a video game world. Thus begins level 6, Enter the Cheat Tricks, which is definitely my favorite of the ones I played. It turns out Frink has been kidnapped by a Donkey Kong-esque guy named Stubborn Ape, which was ZK's original working title. There are warp pipes everywhere, enemies resembling Ryu, and weird clones of Mario and Sonic. Let's get a closer look at that Mario guy, why don't we?
Yes, the blood room! I gotta remember to steal a bunch of stuff here.
The best part has to be the posters, which parody real games. Mega Mole Man, Need for Speedo, Metal Gear Soiled, Bite Night, Calamari Damacy, Mortal Kombat, Project Shelbyville Racing, Maddening. I love them so much. There are also blood splatter references to Mortal Kombat Fatality and the BFG from Doom. Lisa's saxophone gets upgraded here, and now stunned enemies will attack each other, which is mighty convenient. Eventually you'll wind up in this room with a giant pipe maze. It's a little tricky at first, but it becomes easier once you figure out what you're doing. After that is the boss battle with the stubborn ape. It's pretty hard to avoid his projectiles when you're trying to attack him, but the best strategy is to just head to the top of one of these things as Lisa and attack him from above. It worked for me. After that, Frink gives Bart and Lisa some power-ups to use in the real world, but decides to stay in the game world because he's fallen in love with a Koopa Troopa. Come on, they won't let me in the Trails of Horror. The next 3 levels can be played in any order. The one I played was Shadow of the Colossal Donut, another delicious pun.
I paid for a colossal donut, and I'm gonna get a colossal donut.
Bart and Homer have to stop the Lard Lad's rampage throughout Springfield by deactivating certain terminals in the Lad. The first one is easy to access, the other 2, well, that's a different story. You're intended to use these balloons so Homer can float up to reach the terminals, but that didn't really work out for me. Instead, I just dropped down from above to reach the middle one. I couldn't reach the top one at all and basically rage quit, but I'm sure if I tried again I'll succeed. Of the games I played, this is definitely my favorite simply because of how involved it is, as well as how it pokes fun at video game tropes. I'm a huge sucker for poking fun at tropes. The Simpsons is and will remain one of the most popular television series because of how relatable the characters are and how amazing their hijinks can get. While Matt Groening has found further success with Futurama and Disenchantment, they'll never be quite as iconic as The Simpsons.
While the show's quality has generally dropped in recent years, I for one welcome our new insect overlords. I for one enjoy most of the adventures the Yellow family endures. So happy holidays everyone, see you next year.
Then everything is wrapped up in a neat little package. Really, I mean that. Sorry if it sounded sarcastic.